All right, folks, I want to introduce my guest. I want you to help welcome Mr. Dave Mack to the Cast Iron Carnivore Show.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I'm glad you're here with me. Tell me your story. How'd you first discover carnivore or keto or low carb cooking?
So I was had two problems that I needed to address. I had to get over some alcoholism or try and address some alcoholism and also pre-diabetes. And to address those two things, I decided to go keto. And I did that because over the past 2 decades, I'd been on and off keto, and I had found that whenever I did keto, I had better self control. So I had a drinking problem and pre-diabetes. I thought, okay, well, I can take care of the pre-diabetes by doing keto, and then the self-control, I can probably get off the alcohol as well. So went keto. And when I went keto, I started incorporating a small amount of non-starchy veggies into every meal. And that was a big change for me because prior to going keto, my diet had been pretty much ultra processed. And so now that I was incorporating these non-starchy veggies into every meal, I discovered something. I realized that plants were trying to kill me. And what would happen was basically straight after every meal, I'd find myself in the bathroom. And at first, I thought, oh, well, this is maybe caused by suddenly consuming so much meat. But after doing a little bit of research, I realized that the veggies, the particular veggies that I was consuming, were gut irritants. And so I thought, well, I'm not exactly married to these veggies, and I've started to see these carnivore videos pop up in my YouTube stream. So thought, not married to them. I'll give them up and see what happens. And so gave up the veggies, the bathroom issues went away, and keto became carnivore, and I've been carnivore ever since. And that's 3.5 years ago now.
Yeah. So you was basically struggling before with alcohol or something, and
Mm,
that's basically what led you down the road to trying to find a way of bettering your health.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, for me, the weirdest thing that I realized in this journey is alcohol was easier to give up than sugar.
Wow.
But fortunately, I managed to give both of them up. But the cravings for the sugar stuck around longer than the cravings for the alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah. Sugar is something else.
Mm.
Um, when you decided to do that, what was one of the things that changed for you first?
The the most immediate changes were sleep and energy. Um, like, and I knew my sleep would get better simply because I'd been on and off keto so much in the past, and that was always the first thing that improved for me. And it was just like being able to sleep through the night, not be interrupted at all, and wake up with the alarm was just such an amazing feeling. Or wake up before the alarm and feel like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to take on the day. So my sleep improved, and of course, probably as a result of that, the energy improved. Um, and along the way, the first couple of weeks, my brain kind of got, I got this clearer thinking, and I was able to kind of not be as emotional about things as I had been. Um, but the biggest change for me was the arthritis I had in my left knee just vanished. And that was about 2 months in. And I hadn't been expecting an improvement there. Like, I hadn't been watching enough content to know that I could expect things to change, like with joint pain and stuff. And I was crossing the road one day. The light was changing. The crosswalk light was changing to red, and I had to start running. And normally, I would get, if I started to move fast, because I had this constant pain in my left knee, my brain would give me this kind of subconscious message like, stop, don't run, it's going to hurt, you know. But I was in this situation where the light was changing, so I had to run to get across the road. And so I started running, got this kind of message, stop, it's going to hurt, but realized even though I got that message, it didn't hurt.
Mm.
And like I kept running, and I was like, this is really odd. The feeling, the painful feeling is gone. And kept running and kept, like, I'd jump up and down, do things, try and make the pain come back, and like, this must be some aberration, you know. But no, it just disappeared, and it never came back. And so that, I mean, that was the massive for me, because I live in Japan, and in Japan you have to walk everywhere. So
Right.
yeah.
Well, now you talked about the pain. I've kind of heard your story a little bit. Maybe you can share that. Did you had a stroke as a young man? Is that what caused the pain that you were having in your knees and legs?
Uh, no, the pain in my left knee was arthritic pain, but yes, I did have a stroke when I was 17, but that affected my right side,
Mm.
and that left me with a limp on my right side. So you can imagine the state I was in, like arthritis on my left leg, and and this limp on my right. You know, it was like some kind of marionette or something. Um, but yeah, I had when I was 17, I went to bed one Sunday evening, woke up on Monday morning ready to go to work, and I was like, "Oh, I've got some kind of virus. I feel really weird." And what I didn't know at the time is that overnight, sometime while I was sleeping, an aneurysm had burst in my head, and that had caused the blood to rush into the brain, caused the stroke. Um, and so I woke up the next day, thought I had a virus, got ready for work, and went to work. And it was only a few hours into the day that I realized, no, something else is wrong. This is not a virus. And I went home, went to the doctor, that kind of thing. And eventually realized what had happened. But that all got resolved. Um, and I had an operation to fix that up. But I've always had a weaker right side, and that included the limp. And what happened after I went carnivore, maybe 2 months, 3 months in, is my balance started to improve. The limp became less pronounced. Strength was coming back into my right side. And so that's after, what would that have been? It happened in 92. So that was, improving 30 years from when I actually had the stroke. So for 30 years, I've been in this kind of suspended animation where I didn't really see any improvements. And then as soon as I increased the saturated fat in my diet and dumped the sugar, it started to get better.
That's great. You know, you talked about alcohol and you talked about sugar earlier. Um, was one or the other harder to get rid of the cravings, or did you have any really serious cravings before you were able to overcome that by starting keto or carnivore?
So this time, it wasn't so bad for either of them. As I mentioned, the cravings for the sugar were stronger, but it was easier to give up both of them this time because I kind of had a plan of how I could improve my self-control. And I also made some changes to my routines throughout the day, so that I wouldn't be presented with a situation where, I'd be walking past a bar, or I'd be, going into the convenience store at the time of day where I would normally pick up a traveler to go home with, or something like that, So I kind of avoided all the situations that would be triggers for me, and that helped a lot. But the main reason that I think I didn't have the feeling like, oh, I can go back to the beer. I can have just one beer. I can have one ice cream, that kind of thing. This time was because this was the first time. I always knew I had an alcohol problem. I always knew that I needed to eventually start eating healthy. But in June of 2022, a doctor had told me that they were both problems. The doctor had just told me I had pre-diabetes. The doctor had just told me we need to do something about the alcohol. And having another person, especially a doctor, tell me that these were issues, that's what made me realize, oh, no, it's got to stop. So I had that kind of extra motivation behind me, knowing that if I go back to the doctor a year from now and not much has changed, the news is going to be worse.
Yeah, I totally can concur to that. I had something similar to that. That was one of the reasons that I dove into the carnivore life myself, because I had, had a wellness test, and the doctor came back and told me that my A1C had now jumped to 7.5. So I knew that was my why. I knew I was going to have to make some changes, and so I fully get that. I fully understand exactly what you're saying. And once you realized you were going to have to make a change like that, kind of give me a rundown, if you don't mind, of what your day-to-day life is like as far as eating. What types of foods are you eating? Do you have any favorite types of foods or favorite types of cuts? Maybe favorite types of fats or something like that?
Yeah. So right now, I'm typically eating one meal a day. Although it's not like a strict rule I have for myself. So if I feel hungry, later on in the day, then I will eat again. But my one meal a day is breakfast usually, and I'll have. In the past, I would have like a pound of ground beef, and I would have about 6 to 8 eggs scrambled with it, and lots of salt on top. And I've kind of changed. I'm not so much into the ground beef now, because the ground beef in Japan is a mix of beef and pork. It's not, you typically can't get straight ground beef here. So I've just gone to eating some sliced beef that they sell at the supermarket here. And that's kind of sliced beef that you would see maybe in a stir fry or something like that. And the reason sliced beef is quite common here is because they use chopsticks, So
Yep.
steak is not as popular here as it would be in Australia or America. And yeah, so I just fry up the sliced beef, and chuck 6 scrambled eggs with that, and lots of salt, and that does me.
Are you pretty strict with that, or do you kind of vary from time to time and day to day?
Um, I don't very much. Like, I'll add some sardines sometimes, things like that. Recently, I've also tried adding a bit of pork, just if I feel like a snack or something. But I'm. It's not that I'm strict, but it's like I'm a creature of habit, and I don't
Mm,
like to think hard about stuff like that. I don't want to do lots of preparation, or kind of thinking like, oh, what should I change up today, and things like that. I just like to cook, get it done, over and done with, and get on with my day.
yeah, I understand. Gotta gotta ask you, since this is the Cast Iron channel. Do you cook in cast iron?
No, and that is that's mainly because I started cooking that way, and then I got all frustrated trying to clean it and trying to keep it in the good condition and whatever, and have just basically gone back to using a kind of standard pan. But I know I should be cooking in cast iron. So if you've got any tips for how I should clean the thing, I'm all ears.
Well, we have a bunch of those on our channel, but I fully understand they are a little more work to keep up with, but they're great to cook in. That's basically all I cook in. So, but you had mentioned earlier talking about not being able to find very much content when you were initially looking around and starting keto and then eventually into carnivore. What were some of the content creators that were out there that were some of the biggest influences early on for you, and that kind of helped you continue to dive in a little deeper and just go all in?
The first person I found was Ken Berry, and that's who tipped me off about the particular vegetables I was eating being the gut irritants. After I found that video from Ken Berry, though, that's when my feed suddenly started changing, and like YouTube works its magic and goes, "Oh, so you watched something that was carnivore.
Right.
Have some more stuff." And I found a guy who's not who doesn't make videos anymore, but a guy called Joey Schwartz. He had a channel called Carnivore Camaraderie, and he would make interviews with other carnivores and just sharing their stories. So it was good to have him playing in the background. But the other influence for me when I first got started was Sten Ekberg. And while he's not carnivore, he basically talks about keto and fasting. He's
Yep.
got a very calm way of talking and a very kind of sciencey approach and whatever. And it was just that calmness and that kind of he was kind of justifying for me of everything I was doing. That was kind of nice to have him he had, at the time, I think he was putting out 2 or 3 videos a week, and there was this massive backlog of content that I could go through. So it was just listening to Sten Ekberg all the time was pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, he and using the whiteboard, he used the whiteboard a lot. And if I remember right, because I've watched quite a few hours of his stuff, I think he was an Olympian, wasn't he?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So very, very knowledgeable gentleman, and I enjoyed watching his channel a lot, and still do from time to time. So, but you mentioned eating OMAD, or 1 meal a day. Do you do any other type of fasting, or do you just basically do a 23 or 23 and a half hour fast and then eat once a day, or do you do extended fast?
I have done some extended fasts in the past, like 48 hours, and I think the longest I've gone it's been a while, but it was 72 hours, I think. Yeah, I have done them. Feel good, lots of energy, better sleep, all that kind of thing. But I don't make a habit of it. It's just the times I've done it is really more of a let's see what happens kind of thing rather than anything else.
Yeah, yeah. I do OMAD myself most days. Now there are some days that I'll maybe eat two meals a day, but for the most part it's 1 meal for me, and it seems to work. I mean, I know some people struggle in early on, and you may have had struggles too, but a lot of people struggle, with getting enough to eat. And matter of fact, I think a lot of people actually don't eat enough. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I would say I think especially for people starting out, they often don't eat enough and for a couple of reasons. The first one is when people are first getting started on carnivore, they're still in that mindset of calorie restriction, that they've had pumped into them all their lives, and so they don't eat enough from that perspective. The other thing when people are getting started is they kind of they think, okay, well, I'm going to start carnivore and I'm going to do intermittent fasting and I'm going to do extended fasting and I'm going to do all of this, and they've got all the plans and they're going to do everything at once. And just going to carnivore is a bit of a shock to your body, but then also trying to do one meal a day at the beginning and trying to do extended fasting as well is something that's going to be really difficult for you. And so I would say for the most important thing for people getting started with carnivore is to just focus on eating carnivore at the start, whether that's 2 meals a day, 3 meals a day, 4 meals a day, whatever it is. And yeah, just let the fasting happen naturally. Just let the getting to OMAD happen naturally. Don't kind of try and force anything, and then you're more likely to be eating the right amount of food for your body. And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think if people would just focus on what needs to be eliminated, the bad types of foods, white flours or rice or pasta or whatever, the bad seed oils, basically, if they would just start gradually working some of those out of their day-to-day routine and then continue to increase more meat base, that they'll gradually, I think. And you mentioned earlier cooking your meal that you add a lot of salt. Now, I know a lot of people, that's another thing that they, once starting this diet or this way of eating, way of life, initially have what we can know as keto flu. And basically, a lot of that is stemming from not having enough electrolytes. Now, is salt the only thing that you basically do, or do you add like magnesium or potassium or anything else to your routine?
Yeah, I didn't at first. It was just salt at first, but with I'd get leg cramps and things like that, and so I just make sure that I'm adding magnesium and potassium in. So sometimes during the day, I make up this cocktail of magnesium, bit of iodine, and a small amount of potassium, and I'll have that throughout the day, and then just before I go to bed, I'll have another little bit of magnesium.
Yeah. Well, I know with this way of life, times can be kind of challenging for you, especially socially and around family or whatever. So, what has been some of the hardest parts for you to get used to or get through or deal with since starting carnivore?
So for me, it hasn't been much of an issue for me, whether it's going out for dinner with family or with friends, because I think once you're carnivore for any period of time, say 90 days, you start to realize that people, including yourself in the past, have been using food as entertainment. And it's a little bit like using in a social situation, food has become a little bit like smoking it is for people who smoke, right? So it's a social lubricant. It's like, if you can't think of something to say at a particular moment in time, and maybe it's your turn to kind of get into the conversation or whatever, you take a smoke of your cigarette. So then you've got this little kind of moment where you can relax and you don't feel like you have to quickly blurt something out. And food's a little bit like that, right? But when you go carnivore for a reasonable amount of time, you start to realize that and start to feel like, I don't need food. I don't need to be shoveling food into my face to enjoy company, to enjoy social interactions with people, And so I can, since about 3 months in, I've been able to, go out to things, whether it's with friends or family, and just enjoy their company. And while they're eating, I can sit there with a nice coffee or whatever it is, and just sparkling water. And, I don't feel like I'm lacking anymore, like I lack something anymore. Having said that, when I first got started, I'm easily swayed by temptation, right? So when I first got started, I just messaged friends and said, "Don't invite me out anywhere for the next few months, because I need to kind of get control of things health wise." And I know if I was put in a situation at that point when I was first getting started, where friends were all sitting around having a drink, or eating this nice cake or whatever it is, that would have been too much temptation for me at that point. So I just said, don't even invite me, so I don't have the option to say yes. And that kind of helped me in the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, that was actually one of my next questions. I was going to ask you, how do you deal with the pressure and cravings? Um, excuse me. Have you ever quit and come back, or have you pretty much maintained steady carnivore since starting?
In the last 3.5 years, I've been steady. I haven't quit at all. But I'm a 2+ decade quitter. Like, I first found Atkins in 2001 and tried it and had great results and never got off induction. So I was basically carnivore when I did Atkins the first time, and it was amazing. But after, I don't know, 3-4 months, I quit that because of pressure and cravings and blah blah blah. And ever since then, I've been on and off keto over that 2+ decade period. And yeah, so I'm a serial quitter, but this time's different. This time has been different, and it might be the doctor. It might be the fact that I got so. I think community is important. So I think probably the fact I feel part of the carnivore community has been a positive influence as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You know, talking about that, I'd like to kind of change gears here and talk about someone that may be watching us that is considering going keto or carnivore. Can you tell us what might have been one of the first things that you wish you knew starting out, that might would help someone, or some advice you could give them before they get started?
Yeah. So my advice would be, firstly, you have to kind of understand your personality. And you need to understand whether you're an all or nothing person or you're a moderator. And if you're a moderator with food, then you can probably transition into carnivore, and you're going to have an easier time gut wise. And it might take you a month, 2 months to fully transition over. But, long term, short and long term, you're probably going to be better off for it, because you're not hitting your body with everything all at once. But if you're like me and you're an all or nothing person, you just got to kind of rip the band-aid off and go for it. And I've been that way with everything. I'm either a drinker or I'm not a drinker. I'm a smoker or I'm not a smoker, And so, and incidentally, that's why I've never tried any kind of illegal drug, because I know that the path's already laid out for me for that, because of how addicted I get to things very easily. And so, yeah, if you're an all or nothing person, rip the band-aid off and jump in. But once you've decided how you're going to go into it, whatever you do, don't don't kind of say to yourself, okay, I'm starting carnivore today, and I'm going to be carnivore forever. Because what that does is it puts a feeling in your mind or it puts a thought in your mind that is going to allow you to start backtracking. What I mean is, if you start carnivore and you're having some cravings, or you're feeling like, oh, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? If you've got this feeling in your mind, like, I'm doing this forever, you're going to start to think, how's that possible? I'm never going to be able to do this forever. I'm never going to be able to do this for 12 months, 6 months. I'm never even going to be able to get to the end of the week. And you start to question yourself, and you start to talk yourself out of doing it. And before long, you're now at the point where you're like, who cares? I'm never going to be able to get to the end of the week doing this. I may as well have that ice cream. I'm useless. I'm no good, right? And so instead of doing that, what I would say is, don't project out. Don't think about the long term. Focus on a day at a time. Just focus on today. Get to bed today without cheating. And what that's going to do is it's going to give you this feeling of, I don't have to worry about the future. I don't have to worry about what I'm doing tomorrow. All I have to do is get to bed tonight without cheating. And then when you wake up the next day, you'll have two immediate thoughts. The first one is, I did it. The
Right.
second one is, I feel better. And those two things is going to turn your resolve up a notch. So it's easier to now get through day 2 without cheating, right? And again, all you have to do is focus on getting through day 2. Next morning when you wake up, you have those two thoughts again. I did it again, and I feel better. Had a much better sleep. I feel better. And again, the resolve goes up a notch. So just keep focusing only a day at a time. And after a while, you're no longer thinking a day at a time, and you're not thinking about, oh, can I do this for a month or something like that? It's just, this is the way I eat now. I feel good.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned earlier talking about addictive personality or whatever. I think a lot of people don't realize that addiction is not just smoking or alcohol or drugs or something. There's actually food addictions too. And I think a lot of people, like you were talking about, the social aspect where they just feel like they have to eat to fit in or whatever. And a lot of, gatherings, family gatherings or whatever, are always, focused around food. And so a lot of people actually have food addictions that they have to break because they've been eating a certain way for so long. And so, as you're saying, as you get started, if you can have those victories one day at a time, over time, you'll actually even break those food addictions as well.
And I would say, like, in those social interactions, those social events and whatever, if you're invited to them, I would say, like, embrace being the black sheep, embrace being different, and that kind of thing. Like, if people think it's weird, fantastic. Like, wear it as a badge of honor, and kind of think to yourself, okay, it makes me stand out, but also it puts me in a position where I don't have to think about conversation starters or anything like that. People are actually going to be asking me questions, and people are going to be, doing the hard work to get about, conversations and whatever. So I can just be reactive and tell them about what I'm doing and whatever. And, um, it just makes those social interactions, you can kind of frame it in two ways. You can go, oh, it's awkward because people are questioning me, or you can frame it like, oh, it's easy because I don't have to do any hard work. I don't have to think about, asking people how's their day been, or how have they been since the last time I saw them, and all this kind of thing. I can just sit back and answer questions.
Right. Yeah, I know for myself, and maybe you can kind of elaborate on this a little yourself. Initially, when I got started, a lot of people were questioning what you were doing, and is eating meat, is that all you're going to eat? You know, and it turned from that after a period of time, after seeing the benefits and the results that I was able to achieve, to turn into now saying, boy, you look really good. That really looks like it's working. How does this work? And asking questions about that. Did you have that initially when you got started, that some family and friends were saying, you got to be crazy? Is that all you're going to do?
Yeah. You get, I remember years ago when I was doing keto, which is relative to carnivore is not that extreme, like all you're doing is cutting out ultra processed foods really and reducing the amount of carbohydrate you're eating in a day. But I remember even back then people telling me I was crazy and you're going to kill yourself and whatever. And it's like, again, I kind of just wear it as a badge of honor. It's kind of it's something I can stand out for. Yeah, I don't let it bother me so much. Um, and along these lines, I think when you first get started, a lot of people can feel pressure because in social environments, like let's say it's a thing at work and someone brings in a cake for someone's birthday or something like that, and like everyone's like, I have just a little piece. Come on, just. And when you first start, especially with carnivore, you can start to feel a little bit indignant, like people are pushing the food on me and stuff, right? But I would actually reframe it a little bit. And I tend to think it's not that they're pushing the food on you, it's that they kind of feel guilty
Right.
because they're enjoying the cake so much. They feel bad eating it in front of you. And they don't need to because you're not really you're going down your own path, you're enjoying your steaks and that kind of thing, right? But they can't imagine a life without cake. They can't imagine a life without cereal. They can't imagine a life without donuts and muffins and that kind of thing, right? So when they're eating them, they feel so guilty because they think, I can't imagine a life without this. So obviously, you can't imagine a life without this either. So I think it's helpful when you're first starting carnivore to kind of keep that perspective in mind as well. That they might not be pushing it; they might just be feeling guilty.
Yeah, I agree. If we were to elaborate a little more on that for the beginners that are maybe watching on my channel or your channel, of when they get started, what are some of the unexpected surprises? I know I've had mine. You'll have loose stools and things like that. Uh, the withdrawals, as we mentioned, kind of like alcohol or sugar, you're going to have those. What type of unexpected uh, things did you experience when you initially got started?
From the negative side, I think. Well, firstly, let me say, I think my body was primed to do this because I'd been on and off keto over 2 decades, right? So I think my body was along the lines of, oh, we're doing this again, are we? Okay, no worries, right? So I don't think I had to suffer through keto flu like a lot of people have to. For me, the issue at the start was loose stool and like seatbelt on the toilet seat kind of. And that's why I was so concerned at the beginning, but it's because I was eating those gut irritating veggies. But other than that, I didn't really, other than the cravings at the beginning, which I was handling as much as possible with you know, the the routine changes during the day. I don't think I really suffered anything else major.
Yeah. Uh, I guess I just want to hit you with a couple other questions and then we'll get ready and wrap this up.
Sure.
Can you kind of talk to me a little bit about fat and fats? like say butter or tallow or ghee or lard or something like that. I know we talked about earlier about elimination, that folks need to be sure and eliminate the bad seed oils and the bad fats and things like that, because as a carnivore, we're protein and fat heavy, and zero or very, very low carb. Can you kind of talk to us a little bit about the fats that you like or that you
Yeah.
suggest?
Yeah. So I have a preference for cooking in beef tallow. And I used to be able to get a really good um, beef tallow through Amazon. Unfortunately, for some reason, that ended, and that went out of stock, or the business stopped, or whatever. So I can't get that through Amazon anymore, and I haven't been able to find any other tallow suppliers that I can easily use. So I switched from tallow at that point to using lard,
Mm,
and I'm not crazy about lard. It just kind of has a different kind of taste when you cook in lard. So it's not horrible, but I didn't really like it. So now I just cook in butter. I can get grass-fed butter from the local supermarket. So yeah, I'm cooking in that, and I'm not one of these people that'll sit there munching on a stick of butter or whatever. But if I'm feeling a little bit hungry, and it's not hunger that I feel like I want to go and cook something, I'll take a little bite of butter. But yeah, I won't sit there munching on the whole stick, because that will send me to the bathroom.
yeah, too much will. You talked about fats there, but what about probiotics or anything like that? Do you eat any type of fermented vegetables or kefir or yogurt or anything like that?
I don't. That's that's not to say I wouldn't entertain the idea if I felt I needed to, or or my body was. I saw some, and my body went, "Oh, why don't you try that?" But yeah, at this point, I haven't.
Mm. All right. Well, very good. I just want to thank you for coming on with us. Can you kind of tell us how people can follow you on your journey, and
Yes.
kind of give us a little encouragement for others that's looking to follow this path?
Yeah. So what I would say is, well, first, you can find me on YouTube, either by typing "no carb life" into the search bar, or at zero carb. And my image will come up with my wide open mouth. Um, but for anyone that's thinking of starting carnivore, I would say give it a go. Just dive in and give it a go. And doesn't matter how good you think you feel now, you don't know how good you can feel. You really don't know how good you can feel until you've done carnivore for a month, 2 months, 3 months. It's really is going to change your perspective on what feeling good really means.
That's great. Wow, man, what a conversation. I just want to give a big thanks to you, Dave, for being so open and real today with our guest and our viewers. Folks, if you've got a question about anything that we've talked about today, about fasting or meat choices or some of the struggles that you may deal with if you're looking to start this way of eating, and even some of the wins that we've had or whatever, be sure and drop a comment down below and I'll get back to you. And, hey, if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. So stay strong, stay focused, stay carnivore, and I'll catch you on the next one. We'll see you guys later. Bye bye.